and want to see what else is out there. Or maybe you just want to make some new friends. The goal is to introduce you to a mentor, to let them share their story, what they've learned along the way, some of those hard lessons, get to know them, and then get to know each other. And so we're supported by a number of MSOs and VSOs, military support organizations and veteran support organizations, including the Institute for Military and Veteran Families out of Syracuse University, Combined Arms and their Texas Veterans Network. And if you're interested in learning about any of those, we're here to share more. Today, I am joined by my friend, my colleague, my sometimes boss, sometimes I'm his boss, we go back and forth, Joseph Kopser, who many of you already know. And he's here to share about his journey as an entrepreneur, his latest entrepreneurial endeavor, which was a roller coaster, and how you can take away some of his lessons that he learned the hard way. So let's give it up for Joseph.
Well, thank you, Lauren, for setting all this up. And this is really cool that I can hold this microphone all the way out here and it's still picking me up, because we're doing two things at once. We are recording on the microphones for the podcast. And is that up there?
We are live streaming on YouTube right now.
Yes. And then over here, this is
Correct.
Another recording. And what's that one for?
That is for the Leading to Win channel, which we will talk about as we transition into what we're doing next.
Perfect. Okay.
Yes.
So I just want to let you know, so if any of you yell out any terrible things I've done in my life, it'll be picked up by all of the recording devices. And then, Chris, good to have you over there. You get some work done while we're working. I love it. Multitasking. So thanks for everyone to come out tonight. We are doing this to be deliberate through Leading to Win and MCM3, which, by the way, I want to credit Lauren with taking the world's largest title, the Military Connected Monthly Mentorship Meetup, and turning it into just a really cool acronym, because in the military we love acronyms.
I think that was you.
Well, I'll take credit if you want to give it to me. But MCM3 is designed on purpose to reflect the values of Leading to Win, which we'll get into a little bit, which is really about bridging. We already know there are plenty of veteran service organizations. Some would argue there are too many veteran service organizations. And so what we do at Leading to Win, and frankly what I've been doing most of my life, is don't try to build something that's already been built. Bring together the smartest people doing what they already do, and if something cool and new comes out of it, great, but let's just try not to overlap, if nothing else. And so that, by way of quick background on me, those of you who haven't had a chance to meet, so I was 20 years Army. I was a nerd before that, long before that. Growing up as a kid, I was one of those very first people that ever got a home computer. Like, most of my friends were getting a really cool new boombox or a really cool new stereo in the 80s, especially as cassette tapes came out. My parents skipped that. I went from 8-track to an IBM PC Junior. It served me very well in high school, so by the time I showed up to college, like, computers, yeah, doesn't everybody have one in their house for the last 6 years? No, they hadn't. So that was cool. Took all that nerdship into the Army. I was a cavalry officer on and off in a lot of different assignments all over the country, 11 different places. I was a combination of muddy boots, jumping out of airplanes, getting dirt, getting sunburnt, to what I would call the strategic side of the Army. So the parts that plan and strategize or run the Army. So like my last assignment before I got here to Austin was I was a special assistant to the Chief of Staff of the United States Army. So working for the 4-star, the equivalent of the guy that just got fired last week. So I know that world and I know how hard it is, but I also know the world of being a platoon leader and know how hard our NCOs and our soldiers work. So I got to see yin and yang, the top and the bottom, the inside and the outside. So that background I just parlayed into Austin, Texas. Got here, was running Texas Army ROTC. I was, for a brief period of time, the only active duty Army officer in Austin, Texas. Nowadays, you can barely swing a dead cat and not hit 20 or 30 Army personnel active duty downtown. So it was a neat experience. Built a company called Ride Scout to make my commute better. But didn't do it alone. Built a team, But the theme of tonight is I built that team with a lot of veterans for 2 reasons. Number one, there was a lot of risk and uncertainty in the mission, and who loves that more than veterans? They're like, sure, let's do it. And then secondly, a lot of them had just left the military and hadn't figured out what they wanted to be when they grew up, much like me. So I was able to bring them along. I think at one point, 5 or 6 of the first 8 teammates were all veterans. But it looked like you're getting ready to say something.
You keep going, then I'll jump in.
Okay. Anyway, so we sold Ride Scout. Then we immediately pivoted and helped build the Bunker Labs, the first chapter outside of Chicago, right here in Austin, Texas. It was right in our Ride Scout headquarters next door. Did a lot of work with Bunker over the years. And then our politics went crazy, really crazy in 2016. So I left private sector and went into politics. Damn near won, didn't, and then pivoted back out, went right back into creating jobs and opportunities. Now I'm spread all over like peanut butter, thin across the bread, having a lot of fun. And then, as Lauren said, my last startup, again, was a run at Democracy, which happened over the last 4 or 5 months. And Finn and Haroon and Lauren were part of that, and several others in the room played meaningful roles in that. So that's me, very quick. Married 31 years, 3 amazing daughters, all adults. 2 of the 3 are married. The third might be married soon. Moving to New York City. If you know anybody in New York City, I can introduce her to.
So that was a whirlwind.
Sorry.
You got a lot.
Sorry.
I want to dig into a couple of items that I think would be interesting for our audience. You mentioned, when we were talking about the plethora of MSOs and VSOs in the community, how important it is to identify who's doing what before you determine if you need to build something new. It's one of the things we're dedicated to in Leading to Win, amplifying existing efforts. This also applies to your startup or small business. Mm-hmm. So when you were evaluating, should I start Ride Scout? What does that look like? There were 2 things I'd like you to talk about. The first was you identified a problem that you had. You were solving your own damn problem. You were the target audience. You knew it from inside out. But in order to determine if you were the right person to create a new solution, you also had to figure out what the lay of the land was. And that's a skill you learned in the Army as well.
Yep.
So talk to us about solving your own damn problem and figuring out if you were the right person to do it.
Yeah, so I can blend this back and forth between business terms and military terms. So in the military, we talk about intelligence preparation of the battlefield. Like, never go any place for the first time. Make sure you've scouted out everything on maps. You've done a map reconnaissance, you've done an aerial reconnaissance, you've done a satellite reconnaissance. You've seen where you're going before you ever get there. Well, in business, we call that, doing your product market fit surveys. I mean, make sure there is an addressable market. Make sure there are people that want to buy your product or service. I tell people all the time, if not, your business is a hobby, not a business. A business provides a product or service, usually around the exchange of money or other services, but a hobby is just something you do because you love it. I mean, you could be in your garage making the world's greatest left-handed football bat, but very few people will buy a left-handed football bat. But you just might love making them. And so I knew that early on in my journey, my biggest problem was getting to work. I was still at the Pentagon. I lived 5 miles from the Pentagon. I could take the ART bus from Arlington, Virginia. I could take the DC Metro bus. I could ride my bike in even. I could ride with a friend. I could drive myself. But every option I had came with pros and cons. And as I mentioned earlier, being a nerd, being an aerospace engineer at West Point, I figured this was a spreadsheet exercise. So I did all the combinations, permutations, how to get to work to and from. And then I realized, why am I trying to build this? Somebody has already built this. Let me just go on the Google machine, probably asked Jeeves back in the day, and went looking for a commuter tool. And Google Maps was in its early days, but that didn't show all my options. And buses were starting to do things online, but that didn't show me other options. And so I finally said, surely somebody has built the one app to bring it all together. And lo and behold, doing my intelligence preparation of the battlefield, nobody had. And that was the entrepreneur epiphany, bring, little light bulb goes off my head. So nights and weekends with the same enthusiasm as that same 13-year-old kid with an IBM PC Junior for the first time, I start trying to figure out the science and business of transportation. And to your point, my only experience with transportation was being stuck in traffic. I wasn't a traffic engineer, not a transportation engineer. And the lesson there is it should not stop you from doing what you want to do as long as you love it. I mean, like right here, Austin Beer Works, Michael McGovern, if you don't know him, Army guy. He was in professional finance in New York City, hated it, but what he wanted to do was something different. And he created a beer company with no experience other than drinking beer. My experience creating Ride Scout was no experience other than being stuck in traffic. And so that's really the message in those early days. So how did I know I could be the one to do it? Well, maybe just because I was frustrated enough that I had just come back from Iraq a second time, away from my daughters for 14 months. And if you know anything about raising daughters, raising kids in general, the only time you really see them is at the breakfast table, and if you're lucky, tucking them into bed. But everything in between, they're gone and busy. So I wanted more time. I wanted more time at the breakfast table with my daughters and less time in my commute. That became kind of the driving force behind Ride Scout. And then from there, it was just a matter of finding people who shared the vision, finding people who are also tired of being stuck in traffic, computer programmers willing to come over and work with us, early branding and marketing people, early investors. But at the end of the day, this is the other thing. When you're starting out, especially as a military guy with no business experience, trying to pitch an idea, the early investors were our community. They were the military veterans who had left the military, had success in their own world, and they knew the power of the military veteran community and knew that if this person was trying hard, I could translate, my military background into potential success as an entrepreneur. So why did I think I was the person for it? I was just the one that wanted to spend more time with my daughters. The marketplace later proved that what we were trying to build was also in demand and not just another left-handed football bat.
Now, Joseph's being a little bit modest here. He ended up selling Ride Scout to Mercedes-Benz. You might have heard of them. Not too shabby.
They're a little car company.
They're tiny. They're
Yeah.
tiny. But
And by the way, so is it okay if that phone stopped their image? Does that mean it's still going?
That's Brian. I will
Brian.
tag in our good friend Brian Cook. I want to pull on this thread a little bit. You mentioned, who cares if you were the right person for it if you were passionate enough about the problem you were seeking to solve? So show of hands, who is currently working to solve their own problem with their business?
Got a few. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Good.
I want to see some hands.
Half the people in the room. That's good.
So when we think about solving your own problem, this is one of your superpowers. You are that expert. You are that target market. And what Joseph did was wrap his arms around the strengths that he knew he had in his military-connected community and the skills that he gained while he was in the Army and said, you know what, I can apply this. Mm-hmm. Now here's the interesting thread as I keep pulling on it. You mentioned that after that, found success as an entrepreneur, you then wanted to give back. And part of giving back and carrying that message forward was helping to start The Bunker, which turned into Bunker Labs, which then got bought out by the Institute for Military and Veteran Families that I mentioned. So we got a lot of history up here of working with an organization dedicated to serving veteran and military-connected entrepreneurs. That's how he and I are connected. And that was 2016, 2017. We're up here today. I managed his damn campaign. We're helping each other with Leading to Win. The strength of your connections carry you. So when you were meeting up with Todd Connor and Blake Hogan and all our good friends, you still had to apply those same questions. Are we solving our own problem? Helping others to solve their problems? And then who else is doing this in the space? There's still that element of market research, even when you're starting a nonprofit, right?
Right. So at that time, so in 2009, 2010, 2011, when I'm talking to people about what I'm doing, first of all, they're like, aren't you in the Army? And then secondly, they're like, go to business school. Well, I was still in the Army and business school wasn't an option. There were, and I know this is hard to imagine when I say it, but at that time there were no organizations dutifully working to help veterans start companies. There was small business, there was, the SBA, the SBA, Small Business Administration. There were groups, but they were just kind of writ large for everybody. There weren't people specifically in the community that spoke our language. Until August of 2014, when I met Todd Connor up in Chicago talking about a veteran-focused military-style incubator, and I beat down the door trying to get into cohort number 1. He's like, you live in Austin, Texas. And I'm like, I will commute. I need to be a part of this. Because in those early days, we're already, less than 1% of the U.S. population, and entrepreneurs are an even smaller subset of that. So I could damn near give you a list of the names of everybody that I knew of in 2011, 12, 13 that was trying to build a company, at the time. It was a very small community. Luckily, thanks to Bunker, and now I'm not going to start listing them all because I'll leave them out. It's like a wedding reception. You'll leave out an uncle or an aunt, they'll be pissed. But there are so many organizations now that get it, that the value is unleashing the potential of all of these military veterans and what the business world calls human capital, but the translation is the strengths and the skills and the attributes that you learned that maybe even right now you don't appreciate how much you learned compared to some of your civilian peers who haven't learned that yet. They haven't had that hardship. When I was thinking about it the other day, when I was 26 years old, now the same age as all 3 of my daughters, I had already been a platoon leader, and at that time I was a squadron S4 managing a multi-million-dollar budget for nearly 1,000 soldiers and several hundred pieces of moving equipment. I was 26 years old. Who gives a 26-year-old that much experience? The military does. So anyway.
Well, and that carries forward, I would say. And many of us have found ourselves in situations where you just fucking make it work. You got a lot of responsibility on your plate. Someone said, can you do it? You say yes, and then you figure it the fuck out. I know this is being live streamed. We'll not share this with my mother.
And we will beep it so that YouTube doesn't
There
put
you
us
go.
into the
Yes.
whatever category.
So that carried forward come 2016 when you said, you know what? There's some other big problems that I want to solve.
Yeah.
So talk to us about that moment in 2016. That'll then carry us forward to, Finn and I supporting you more recently. But you saw a problem, you wanted to solve it, and you did your market research and said, listen, there's no one else doing it the way I would do it.
Yeah, no surprise, but our politics are a little bit messed up right now. And even well before that, even before 2016, we could start to see this division in society fueled in large part by social media, giving every voice and every audience the chance to just choose their own tribe. And if the algorithm didn't feed you what you were looking for, you just clicked on the articles you wanted to listen to, and that just further perpetuated your world. So as all that's happening at rapid speed in 2016, I said, well, wait a minute. I served in the Army for 20 plus years. If you literally held a gun to my head and said, say the political party of all of your platoon leaders, platoon sergeants, and first sergeants, I'd be like, I don't know, just shoot me right now. We never got into politics in that way because our mission preceded our politics. So I said, well, I have a new mission, and it is to run for Congress to remind us that we have more in common than that which separates us. And we had a blast. It was the same tenets, though, of building a startup, same tenets of being dropped in Mosul, Iraq in 2007 without a plan. It was the same tenets of figure it out, to use your language, to just figure it out, and that's what we did. The cool part, though, about 2016 was, I had been in business for 5 or 6 years and successful in creating disruption. And prior to that, 20 years in the military. So when I ran in 2016, mind you, I was a complete novice in politics, the actual politics. but we raised more money in that year than anybody, and I won't go into all the different categories, but basically than anybody who was a first-timer ever at that time. More than, so there's 36 congressional districts in Texas, each side, 72, plus multiple people running in each race. So do the math. There were hundreds of people running for Congress that year. And in Q4 of 2017, this little old Kopser for Congress team, we raised more money than anybody running for Congress in the state of Texas. And we did it for two reasons. One was the team that we built and the way we focused on not using the tools of the political industrial complex. Because, by the way, you ever get those annoying text messages? Yeah, don't get me started. Anyway, so that we, ignoring the tools of the political industrial complex, we built new tools we used in the military, tools we used in business. Secondly, it was the message. Our message was about jobs, education, your kids' future. Somebody would be in an audience at an event and they'd try to get me with a gotcha. And before I could get me with a gotcha, I backed up the question, just like we were taught, in military media training, which is, answer the question you want to answer. Don't be taken down the road of what they're trying to do with the gotcha. And I just backed the question up to be like, well, can we first agree that we would love for this to be that way? And then the person would be like, yeah, well, I agree that, you disarm them. Anyway, but that startup, when it was all over, we received more votes. Our campaign received more votes than any Democrat in the history of Texas running in a congressional race in the midterm elections. Now, we still lost because of gerrymandering and other stuff, but I thought that was pretty cool. First timer out of the gate, building a team. We received more votes than any Democrat running in the history of Texas. What it further taught me was, in the chaos, when you see a problem, you can't just stop if you don't get it the first time. Because a lot of us in this room have had multiple attempts at companies. Some work, some don't. That's life. And you just got to keep going at it if it's something you care about.
And that brings us here today because you didn't stop. You didn't stop building. You didn't stop working with incredible nonprofits and people. And for your second campaign, which we just got through, you again wrapped your arms around your military-connected community. Haroon and I were just talking about how he met you here at Capital Factory.
Yeah, even before the campaign.
So, because they're here, tell us how you met Finn and tell us how you met Haroon, because it brings us back to connection and the power of this community and how you build a startup, how you build a team.
Yeah, and so, that's the key with both of them. So with Haroon, it's about Capital Factory. Oh yeah, you can go like that. It's about finding community. It's about establishing who you are, what your values are. And for me, a lot of that was on stage and different events. I do a lot of things here at Capital Factory, Station Austin. And we met through the entrepreneurial world. And then when I announced that I was running and kind of my platform, he raised his hand and said I want to volunteer and help you out with all the policy and anything that I can do. And I was like, sweet, let's do it. And then in the case of Finn, one of the other side hustles I had was with the university. Oh yeah, raise your hand, that's Finn. One of the other side hustles I had was with the University of Texas up in the Office of Government Affairs in the tower, working on military veterans issues. And the Student Veteran Association at UT has a number of events, and I tried to go to as many as I could, and one of them was out at Pint House Brewery, another plug for another military veteran co-founded company. We're everywhere, look around. And that's when Finn and I met and had a great conversation over the picnic table, eating pizza, drinking beer, and then sure enough, a year plus later, I was looking around for folks, and I'm like, I'm getting ready to go make another run for the State House. You know anybody that can, help me? And some friends of ours in common said, you got to know this Finn guy. I'm like, I think I met Finn before. And then it didn't take long, and we were working together, and same thing with you. Yep. I came to you and said, look, I know what I'm doing. I just need somebody to help me pull all this together. And Lauren's like, yeah, I think I could do that. And this is the learning point, though, for your companies, your endeavors. We've known each other for years. We've known each other for a couple of years in different deals. I see multiple familiar faces around this room with people I've worked with over the years. I say this to people when they're raising money all the time. I say, when should you start raising money? And I'm like, too late. Like, what do you mean too late? Like, when you decide to start raising money, if you haven't been spending years giving away your time or your money or your resources, you're going to have a hard time raising money, because if you're only seen as someone who takes and doesn't give back, well, they're not really going to answer your mail as very quickly as you would maybe hope. And so for us to be able to build a team and to build the infrastructure as fast as we did, like, it was wild how fast we built that thing, and had a lot of fun doing it. So, but it started years ago. I mean, since I lost in 2018 to when we ran again in 2026, I spent the last 8 years in between those with another organization we created called US Tomorrow. So it's ustomorrow.us, another shameless plug. It's a newsletter, but it's out there to remind us. I mean, it gets almost zero traction on Twitter because I never say anything divisive or ugly or nasty, and it just doesn't get the clicks. Well, thank you, Kevin. Thank you. It just doesn't. I'm like, common sense. I'm just kind of like, and so the people the 9,000 almost followers that we have, they seem to enjoy pretty pragmatic articles and reading, and it's just not clickbait, but I do it kind of like a left-handed football bat because I believe it's important, and I do it as a labor of love, and so we'll see.
So I'd say there's a couple takeaways here if we're looking at this through the lens of entrepreneurship, building a business, building a network. Who in here has built a team based on their network? I know all of you. So.
Yeah. Basically everybody.
Basically everybody. That's the power of these meetups. Haroon was sharing that he had never been to Capital Factory before. He came because he was new to Austin. He was coming to go to school, and he wanted to figure out what it was all about. The power of coming to meetups, as sometimes uncomfortable as they may be. If you're at a meetup for the first time, maybe your friend dragged you along. And so you got a buddy, you got a battle buddy to go with. But introducing yourself to people, telling them who you are, telling them what you're passionate about, it's not always easy, but it's worth it. You never know where it's going to take you. And I'd say the other thing that I want to really kind of hammer in for everyone is that you stayed engaged. So even though you didn't win in 2016, and we didn't win this year, and that's okay, you stayed engaged. You decided that there was a way that you could carry your message and your voice forward. You just had to pivot in the method. So when we think about that for startups, how would you, frame that for a startup founder or a small business owner, that you got to stay engaged, you got to keep moving the mission?
So my first name for Ride Scout, the first domain that I ever think I owned, but I was so junior and clueless, I don't think I actually did the paperwork right with GoDaddy, but that's a different story. But it was called MTC, E-M-T-C, MTC. Because what I was trying to do in the early days was do more ride sharing together. What I didn't realize at the time is that also might conflict with emergency medical technician, EMTC, but so there were all these problems that I was figuring out as we went. And then I realized, okay, MTC is probably not the best thing. What it really is this ride sharing app is, again, this is before Uber and Lyft. You have to remember there was a time before Uber and Lyft, and I was one of those companies trying to build what we know as Uber and Lyft. So I'm going to call it Going My Way. You're already going to that same destination. You're going to the same concert, same event, same school, same workplace. Let's go at the same time. Let's be going my way. Well, I was such an idiot, didn't know anything about SEO, search engine optimization, and anytime you typed in Going My Way, what do you get? What? Lenny Kravitz, that's close. That is a good song, though. I said, that's Are You Gonna Go My Way? I'm a big Lenny Kravitz fan. Anyway, but Going My Way was a 1950s movie with all kinds of famous people who I couldn't tell you right now, but it so bothered me every time I did anything going my way. I never got any traction because it was always this other thing. Till finally our teammates, Kate Ron Kanan and Ryan Black, came to me. They were two UT grad students, and they said, Joseph, we know this is your baby. We know you've been at this for 4 years, but we have got to change the name of this company to something that's novel and new because we're getting killed in SEO and nobody can ever find us and they think that we're a 1950s movie. So to your point about being, you have to be, and this is hard to describe, you have to be wedded to the cause or inspire, you have to be able to inspire yourself to what you're doing, but you can't be so connected to a name or a logo or a brand that you can't be willing to pivot or grow. And that's the same thing for me on names of companies. That's the same thing for me with names of political parties. I mean, it's the same thing with names of people and clients that I work with. I am less worried about the brand, unless, of course, it's something awesome like JP Morgan Chase or USAA or some of the other cool brands in this room. Anyway, but it is more about the mission and the people involved.
That's what I teach my students. You need to be married to the mission or married to the problem. You are just dating your solution. You are in a situationship with your solution. Okay?
Wow. Have you written about that? If I Google that, can I find
should.
it? Because we got it on film now.
We got it on film now, so now I got to write about it. You are in a 2-week situationship with your solution. You have not made it official. You might still be seeing other people. You don't get married until everyone signs off. So there's a few takeaways that I've heard. Number one is solve your own problem.
Yeah.
Be married to that problem. Just dating your solution. The other is really lean into the power of your network. Go to these events, meet new people, get uncomfortable, be vulnerable about that problem that you want to solve, and then stay in touch. You met Finn a year ago. This year you reached out and you're like, hey buddy, you want a job? So stay in touch. The other thing that I think is really important is stay engaged. So regardless of the outcome, you stay engaged because you're married to that problem, you're married to that mission. So let's talk about what's next. How are you going to stay engaged?
Yeah.
Knowing that this is a problem that you want to solve, divisiveness, bridging that divisiveness.
Yeah, well, I can even take it back to the military community to kind of give you an idea of where it goes. So in 2011, when I was leaving the Army 2013, after 20 years, I went through many of the same briefings and transition and what do we call it? What were the programs back then called? TAP, total? No, what's that mean?
Transition Assistance Program.
Yeah, it's so bad I've already forgotten it. But it literally for me was so bad that in this big briefing room, I'll never forget, same set of slides, same everything, I got a command sergeant major of 30 plus years to my right and a specialist with barely 3 years to my left. And we're getting the same briefing. And I'm like, are you kidding me? In fact, it was so bad that I had to miss one of them for whatever reason, and I got a special sign-off that I could come in and do a one-on-one. And this guy, bless his heart, he sat me down at this desk in this conference room, and he starts opening up this slide deck. And it was all the slides that would have been on the slides, on the slideshow that I missed. And he starts going like this, and he starts reading them to me. And I'm like, oh, wait, hold on. Am I required to sit here and have you read every one of these to me? He goes, well, technically, yeah. I said, well, what if I went real fast through the whole book? Could we just sign off and we're done? And he goes, and I just went, and I was like, I got it. And he's like, okay, all right, that works. So anyway, so he signs off and I retire. Well, in the summer of 2013, Ride Scout, mind you, has been being built nights and weekends when I wasn't doing my Army job. And I happened to meet, before the Capital Factory existed, I happened to meet at the Austin Chamber of Commerce. And luckily for me, Congressman Eric Flores was in the audience, or one of the people we were briefing. And he says, young man, I'm looking at your biography. You just got out of the Army 6 months ago. And I'm like, yes, sir. And he goes, you learned how to do all this in 6 months? And I said, oh, no, sir. And he said, well, how'd you figure out all this business stuff? And I said, well, when I wasn't in class teaching Army ROTC, I go over to business school and just sit in the back of the class of a business school class and just listen to them talk. Anything I didn't know, I wrote down, and then that night went back and studied it and figured out what the hell they were talking about. And he said, you learned business from just listening to business school people? And I said, yes. He says, you didn't pick any of this up in your transition program? And I was like, oh, please, Congressman, let me tell you about my transition program. So anyway, so I told him about it. And he goes, do me a favor. Come to my committee. Oh, I left one thing out. And he says, is it going to be this easy for all of your peers? And I said, oh, no. I said, let's keep this in mind. I left the Army and built this company, you know, kind of on my own with my friends and teammates. But I had the luxury of a West Point education, 20 years as an officer, retiring as lieutenant colonel, a Harvard graduate degree. If it was this hard for me, God help the 26-year-old E5 that's getting out trying to do what he's trying to do or what she's trying to do, because at least I could fall back on some diplomas that might get me in the door. But if you didn't have that, what have you got? And he said, well, I don't know. What's your solution? And I came up with 3 or 4 different things. And he goes, oh, hold on. Come and speak to my committee in Congress and say what you just said again. So November 6th, 2013, I go and sit before the subcommittee on Veterans Affairs, and Congressman Flores says, okay, Joseph, now you've built this company, but I understand that the military transition process didn't really help and support you. What ideas do you have? And one of the ideas that I'm so proud of that I proposed to that committee that day is I said, for every year you're in the military, you should get 1 week in an internship with a private sector company, and the military should pay your bill, your salary, because you're already an ice cube, you're no good to the unit, but because the United States Defense Department pays unemployment insurance for any veteran in the first 18 months at the time who doesn't have a job, it's a win-win for everybody. You're going to pay one way or the other, so why not let them learn their job while on active duty with a company near where they live? Now, you know where the story is going. Then I later talked to Senator Cory Booker. A few years later, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce gets involved. A few years later, we have what's called SkillBridge. So the fact that I played a very small part in SkillBridge is another example to Lauren's point about staying engaged. Because for me right now, it's about pulling forward all of our brothers and sisters that are military connected, because there just aren't enough people looking out for us, so we have to look out for each other. So Lauren's question was, what's next for me? Well, so what's next for me is, with all these cool life experiences I had, now I get to stitch them all together in kind of like one thing. And it's building community, and it's going forward. So on the business side, it's about working with veterans and ideas and entrepreneurs who are trying to build something cool. In the defense innovation community, it's about finding civilian tech companies who maybe can't speak military, but we need that technology to help the warfighter. It's helping them. It's also stuff that I do with Leading to Win, that we do at Leading to Win, to be able to bridge the gap between the military and the civilian community, because I think our politics are really fixed when it comes to bringing people closer to the mission of the military, which is to defend the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And then lastly, it's about workforce. But my favorite people to talk about the workforce is getting veterans into the workforce, because I think our 22-a-day problem can be lessened by having people feel a great sense of purpose for what they do at work or for their livelihood or how they support their family. So I may not have explained it very well to you all, but in my brain, Lauren is helping me in whiteboard exercises, and we're going to figure out how to get all this pushing and moving in the same direction, because in my mind, it's kind of all in the same way. For you all, the bumper sticker is, you served your country, now it's time for your country to help better serve you so that we can work together to serve the country. Anyway.
Speaking as someone who knows you and has done the whiteboarding, I would say there's 3 themes that you are carrying forward. You are building community, you are bridging gaps, and you are creating opportunities. Whether that's in the veteran and military connected community, whether that's for those seeking workforce development and career advancement. We both work in defense innovation. So if you are also on that journey to build community, bridge gaps, and create opportunities, you should be talking to Joseph about his experiences. Because we've all learned the hard way. And the best way that you can carry that forward is to serve the next veteran. So I want to go ahead and open it up for questions. And this can be about Joseph's career in politics, about starting Ride Scout as an entrepreneur, you know, being a girl dad, which is also a big, big job. So let me open it up for questions. And this mic is very sensitive, I will say that. So any questions for Joseph?
And if there are no questions, I'll just keep talking for like 2 more minutes, and then we can all keep socializing.
Ooh, okay.
Stumped him. Let me tell you one thing I am building, though, because when I was 12, 13 on my first computer, I needed answers quick, and I had no internet. Hell, I had no email. I didn't even have a hard drive on my computer, but I was wanting to get at answers. And then when I was in the Army, I read every damn TM, FM, and publication that the Army had to learn the trade of the Army. So much so that I later wrote a paper about mentorship because I was trying to figure out how do people learn stuff? Because it's not just self-development like what you learn in a book, but it's also experiential learning that you can learn either by bumping into the wall in the dark. That's one way to experience things. And second is to live vicariously from the experiences of others, and that's mentorship. And so in addition to all that, as I just kept getting older and trying to become faster and smarter about different things, I kept devouring more information until I realized, oh shit, what am I doing for the 12-year-old Joseph, the 22-year-old Joseph, the 32-year-old, and the 42-year-old, and the 52-year-old Joseph? Well, now there's an answer for that, and it's going to be published soon, which is, if I were me and I wanted to talk to me, I've got tons of questions for me. But maybe I don't ask it in a forum, but I want to ask and figure out the answer. Well, it turns out that between US Tomorrow and Gray Line, I have sent somewhere near in the ballpark of around 400 or 500 newsletters between Medium, US Tomorrow, and Tumblr. Y'all remember Tumblr? I probably have about 200 posts. Then I inventoried it using our friend Google combined with AI and all these things. I have over 300 interviews. And so it turns out there's like somewhere near 3,000, 4,000 pages of thoughts, ideas, and talks that I've given. So what I'm doing now is I'm using all the new cool tools like AI, and I'm boiling them down into one repository. So the next time I get a chance, I'm gonna do a shameless plug. Yep. On my LinkedIn page, you'll see a thing that says book an appointment. You can just grab 15 minutes on my calendar, and I love it because I hear from different people working on different things. I mean, I don't know any of these people from Adam, but they found the link and they booked time with me. But I recognize that if I were me 20 years ago, 15 minutes would not be enough. And what I'm really excited about is I get to have this tool that they can just go to and be like, let's continue the conversation with Joseph, and be like resources and people and things. Now, it's not gonna make the introduction for them, but it is gonna tell the story of how nervous I was at my very first pitch ever at South by, so clueless about the way pitch competitions work that when it was over at South by, I started to walk off stage only to find out there was Q&A. I didn't know there would be Q&A after a business pitch competition. It was my first real win ever. So anyway, so that's coming soon. That'll be out and about, and if it's interesting to you, you can certainly tap into it.
I love it. And you guys will continue to hear from us about plans for the big Leading to Win community conference and convening, which is going to be over the weekend of September 11th. This year it is the 25th anniversary of 9/11. It is also the 250th birthday celebration of our country. And for those of you that are football fans, it is the UT Ohio State football game We don't say the Ohio State, we say Ohio State. So we're going to have a lot of fun. And here is my ask now. We need volunteers, guys. I am recruiting ambassadors. I am recruiting folks for Leading to Win, for IVMF. So if you are interested in using your time, your talents to make a difference, we want to work with you. So let's give Joseph a big round of applause, and you can come chat with him now if you were too embarrassed to ask a question.
And thank you for Lauren for putting all this together. Thank you, Lauren.
Was